Hey guys, welcome back to Caleb's Fish Corner. Today I am going to be talking about something that I've learned just over the past day that when I come to think of it, it seems really obvious, but it's just something that unless it happens to you, you don't really think about it. And this is going to be basically talking about any type of fish food and relates to any kind of fish that you may be keeping. So, as you know, like a week or so ago, I posted a video about a blue arowana. It was a very pretty fish. It was about 4 to 6 inches long, and I had it in a 60-gallon bow front aquarium that was basically a quarantine tank for it to make sure it was eating and get some size to it before I put it in the 150-gallon. And then, of course, it would have been moved to a bigger tank down the line. But anyway, that fish was being fed frozen krill, and the krill was no bigger than half an inch or so, if that it was eating. And I've been feeding it the past week or so and had no issue. Now, what happened is I came in one day, and within 2 to 3 hours, I've been in my fish room about 4 times. And I kept monitoring all the fish to make sure nothing was going wrong. The filters were working, the fish were fine, temps were stable, and the arowana has been swimming around the tank all the time. And I came in about 30 minutes after my last checkup, after feeding krill to it like an hour or so before, and it was swimming around fine. Now, of course, I didn't notice anything, but when I came back in for the 4th time, the arowana was facing upright with its nose to the top of the water, and it was not breathing, and it had died. And I was scratching my head around, why did this fish die? I've had it for about a week or so, and it didn't show any signs of illness. It didn't have a wasting disease or anything I could tell. And the water was fine. The filters were working. The temps were in check. But when I took the fish out to remove it, to dispose of it, I decided to look at the fish to find out what could have caused it to die, if I could see anything. When I popped open its mouth, I noticed that it had a krill stuck in the back of its throat, like it had choked to death. And it got me kind of thinking. I was like, well, the fish has been eating the same food for about a week, and it didn't seem to have any issues. But the more I thought about it, the more the size of the food matters. Which, obviously, I mean, you wouldn't feed an oversized pellet like the Extreme Monster pellet that's 9 millimeters to a guppy. It would just, I mean, if the guppy could, which it wouldn't, but if it could fit it in its mouth, it would then choke itself because it couldn't swallow and it couldn't, probably wouldn't even breathe right. So, obviously, you don't want to feed food that's too big for your fish. However, the krill I was feeding actually wasn't that big, and the arowana usually had no issue eating it. So, it just amazed me that the food that you choose could be it could be deadly to your fish based on the size of it. So, for example, when I'm feeding my Eureka Red African cichlid peacocks, I feed them the Extreme Big Fella pellets. Now, these pellets, as you can see in the container, they're I'm not sure exactly, they're 3 millimeter size pellets. Now, the fish that's in the tank and the size they are, they have no trouble eating this, and it doesn't have a risk of being choked on it. Now, if I was to go and look at, the Extreme Monster pellet, which are that big, they could actually fit that in their mouth quite easily, but the fact of them being able to swallow it and be able to do normal functions wouldn't. So they could eat this, but for their health and stuff, it's actually better to stick with a 3mm pellet. And the same goes for like my small Eureka Red peacock cichlids. I've actually been feeding them a mixture of krill and spirulina flakes along with the nano pellets, which are 1/2 millimeter size. And this is the biggest pellet that I've gave them because they can't consume the 1.5mm pellets yet. They could eat this, but then again, it basically makes a choking hazard. So a way that I can think of it is, imagine having like a baby or a small kid and you are feeding it a baby snack. Of course, if it's an infant, you don't want to give it a big piece of like whatever you'd feed the baby or the toddler. You don't want to put something that's too big that they could potentially get choked on. Because yes, they could eat it, but it doesn't mean they should. So now, when you're looking at other stuff like algae wafers. Now yes, these are big and some fish will actually swallow these whole. Like my Oscar and some of the catfish that I have will actually eat this whole. But normally the algae discs and the flakes you don't have an issue with because they basically sit on the bottom of the tank or floating in the water, and the fish is able to eat off of it or just fit the whole flake in its mouth and it'll basically grind up into a powder. So it just blew my mind. It was something simple that I just never noticed, and now that I've had that happen, I've actually never had a fish choke to death on food, but now that's happened, it makes me more leery of what I put in my fish tank. Now, of course, every time I feed, I actually watch them eat. But I don't get to know if they actually swallow the food and don't have an issue with actually getting it down into their stomach to digest it. So it just kind of, it was something that I wanted to let everyone know, just in case you've never thought about it or you never had it happen, that you can kind of base the food off of your fish and make sure you choose a food that won't get stuck in their throat and potentially choke them to death. Now, if you guys have had any of those horrible instances where you've had a fish actually die from eating food, put down in the comment section below for other people who watch the video to see, or just so I can read them because I enjoy reading the comments that people put on the videos. Also, if you want more information and more tank videos and fish species profile and DIY videos, I have about 22 fish tanks in the fish room right now, and there's always something happening, whether it's good or bad. I showcase it all. But hit the subscribe button and like this video and comment down below what you'd like to see more of. Also, today's video is just I wanted to show you guys what had happened, unfortunately, to the blue arowana. I am very disappointed that that happened, but it just goes to show that this hobby is an up and down roller coaster. You can have the best tank setup, no water issues, and then this one day something stupid happens and a fish dies or a tank dies or a filter fails or whatever, and it's just something you gotta work through. It's something that you gotta understand and kind of just push your way through. So don't get discouraged or give up on the hobby just because you had a fish or a tank full of fish die, because it's just some things you can't avoid. Other than that, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this short video. Hope you guys learned something. Hopefully I just at least gave awareness to not necessarily the type of food you're feeding, but the size of it. That way you just don't run into any potential issues. As always, guys, stay safe, keep keeping fish, and I'll see you next time.